Most amateur producers know they're amateurs. They know that their music is not stacking up to what they hear on Spotify. But here's a question. What are the biggest factors that really separate pros from amateurs? Let me put it another way. What things do pros know, or what things do pros do that amateurs don't? I'm going to show the 5 biggest things that pros nail that amateurs typically do not. And the truth is that all 5 of these things, they work together. So you can't just be great at one and then not have the other 4. You have to be great at all 5 to make this truly work. So make sure you watch all the way to the end. Number 1, beginners are too focused on learning how to use effects plugins and mixing techniques, but pros understand that plugins are just tools that are only as good as the production itself. Pros focus heavily on getting a great sounding production before applying a ton of mixing. And in fact, pros are going to have killer sounding productions before the mixing phase even starts. Don't believe me? Well, let me show you an example of one of my own productions that's not mixed, that sounds great already with nothing but the production. The song here is called Cloud 9, and there is not a single plugin on this production that I'm about to play for you. Not even on the vocals, completely dry. This is just the chorus.
I close my eyes and it takes me to another world. I'm on cloud 9 and I cannot get enough. I close my eyes.
Sure, the vocals sound a bit weird without the reverb and compression, but other than that, if you just think about the instrumental, I think that we can agree that this already sounds great. The drums sound great, the bass sounds great, the guitars sound great, and friends, there isn't a single plugin on this production yet except for what was already baked in. If you think that mixing is the saving factor between pros and amateurs, you're wrong. Pro producers are making killer music before they ever start mixing. Of course, mixing is going to help this track. I'm not saying it doesn't. Of course, mixing is important. But if your production doesn't already sound awesome before mixing, you've got a lot of other issues to work through. Number 2, amateurs don't dial in their source from the get-go, and they instead wind up using average sounding audio at best, whereas pros understand recording techniques, proper input levels, gain staging, and proper acoustic environments to get the best recordings possible, even if it's just a vocal. If you get that wrong, the whole track is going to suffer from it. I've talked a lot about this in other videos, but if you are recording in a really crappy room, you're using a large diaphragm mic, really sensitive mic, guess what? You're going to probably wind up with really bad sounding audio no matter how expensive your mic is. I've got a $1,500 mic. If I throw that up in my spare bedroom with no paneling on the wall, no acoustic treatment, it's going to sound like garbage. So if you're tracking vocals, it's clipping, coming in too hot, then it's not going to sound good. If you're tracking subpar performances, then guess what? It's not going to sound professional. Now here's something I want you to remember. One of the biggest differences from professionals and amateurs is that professionals understand that getting it right is a lot more about making a lot of small decisions that are really smart, but getting the basics done right. And it's not about making, a few really big decisions. Pros understand that getting professional quality is all about making 1,000 really smart decisions that are small and basic and fundamental. Whereas amateurs, they usually think that there's some magic button, some secret they don't know, or some tip or trick that's going to make all the difference in the world. If you think that, you're probably going to stay stuck. The truth is that nailing killer productions is all about nailing the basics and doing them really, really well. In my program, Producer Accelerator, we give a lot of feedback to our students. This is one of the things I'm consistently giving feedback on. Focus on the basics, because so many people are putting out music where, there's some really cool things happening, right? But it's really lacking on the fundamentals. The whole track suffers from it. And then they're wondering why it doesn't sound professional. Stop believing the lie that there's some quick trick or secret that will magically make you go from amateur to pro. There's no secret plugin, okay? There's no secret AI thing that you don't know about waiting for you to discover. And you need to instead focus on nailing the fundamentals. That means nailing recording techniques in a way that will get you stellar audio, but also stellar performances. Garbage in, garbage out. Number 3, beginners don't have a developed ear for incredible sound selection, and they typically end up using samples and sounds that sound cheap. But pros know how to find the perfect sounds, what libraries to use, and have a keen ear and ability to get their sounds dialed in. Music is sound, right? So if your sounds kind of suck, then I think your music will suck. This is not me saying go spend a lot of money on sound. This is me saying that you need to develop your ear. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. This is not going to happen overnight. There is no magic formula for getting this down faster, but here are some ways, practically, that you can speed up learning. Ready to take some notes? Here we go. First, we ultimately become tuned into what we listen to, but you have to actually go a step further. So when you are listening to music, do not listen as an audience member. You don't listen casually. Listen as a student. Analyze what you're hearing. Study those sounds. Describe the sounds. I do this all the time. When I listen to music, I am almost always thinking about, why does that sound that way, right? Or how could I replicate that? I wonder what they did. And then I'm thinking about it and describing it. And if you don't know, then go open your DAW and start learning. Go from the song to your DAW and back and forth and try to model after those sounds, specific sounds. If you want to be better at choosing sounds, then you need to actually do some ear training. It is the only real way that you're going to be able to do this in a practical way. Some people obviously just have a natural gift at this. If that's not you, then you might think you're out of luck, but you can actually do stuff to make this better. You can train your ears. And if you don't do this, your ear, it's not going to really know the difference between a really cheap sound and something that sounds really expensive. So when I'm looking for sounds, I can identify crappy sounds Pretty much immediately. But how, right? Well, because I've spent literally 15 years developing my ears and training my ear to know how to identify these sounds and know what works and what does not work. And one of the ways was by becoming an analyst with the music that I listen to. I study music. The second way that you can become faster at this is by spending 30 minutes at a time doing what I call sound exploration. Literally, it's this simple. Open your DAW and spend 30 minutes, not making music, but instead just looking for sounds and spending time learning what you even have available and comparing sounds with each other and describe them in your mind, the things that they are unique from one another. Make mental notes of where those sounds are and then become deeply familiar with what sounds you even have available. And be thinking about how you would use these sounds so that when circumstances come up, you can go and say, oh, I need that. Okay, I know where I can find that. I have almost 2 terabytes worth of samples. Think about that. That's millions of sounds. So how am I supposed to produce music and know where to even find those, especially if I'm needing to produce something on a very tight timeline? Well, I actually spend time dedicated to learning what things I have access to. I know exactly where to find the sounds I want. I have mental footnotes that I know where to go if I need a wild keyboard sound. Great, cool, I'm gonna go to Hammers and Waves. That's my go-to. Or Piano Colors, or Noir. If I need dirty drums, great, I'm gonna go to Butch Vig, I'm gonna go to Damage, I'm gonna go to Evolve Mutations, or Battery Ford. Those are my go-tos. Oh, I need ethereal strings, great. Oliver Arnold's Chambers Evolutions, or maybe Chamber Strings, or Ethereal Earth. You get the idea. I know exactly where to start because I know what I have access to. I've spent time training my brain to know where those sounds are as a starting point, and I know which ones are the best ones. If you are not doing this, then you'll be stuck choosing the same old sounds that sound like crap. You might have access to 2 different string libraries, and you haven't actually explored both of them, so you're using the one over here, all the while the other one that you haven't explored is the one that actually has better sounds. Professionals know what they have, and they know where to go. Number 4, beginners don't understand arrangement and composition to create insanely interesting and dynamic productions. If you are a copy-paste producer, then your stuff probably isn't going to sound very interesting. Pros are arrangement beasts. That's the majority of the time that we spend crafting out the perfect arrangement to allow for push and pull, tension and release. We know when it needs to be big and when it needs to be small. Basically, they understand musical storytelling. One of the best ways you can find out if your arrangement is boring is to scrub in the production, 15 to 20 seconds ahead in increments, and listen. Does it sound the same throughout the whole song? If so, it's probably not a compelling arrangement. What's the dynamic level of the song? Are you making sure verse 1 and verse 2 have some differentiation between them, or is it just literally the same thing with different lyrics? That's lame, and that doesn't give anyone any reason to keep on listening. To me, arrangement is all about how am I keeping my listener engaged? How am I making sure that every moment is tickling the ears of my listener in some way? Maybe it's a rhythmic variation, maybe different sounds, maybe different vocal production, maybe different harmonies, or all of the above. There are almost infinite ways that you can make your arrangements more dynamic and more interesting. What's the high point? What's the low point? And how are you getting there? Context. These choices and decisions are things that pros are spending time thinking about and dialing in. If I hear a song that isn't changing in some way throughout the song and the context isn't changing, I'm sorry, but I just get bored and I'm probably gonna hit skip. Now, before we move on to the last one, I do wanna let you know that my program Producer Accelerator, which has already helped almost 1,000 producers level up their own productions, is now on holiday sale. It's 50% off, which we only do once a year. It's over 200 lessons. We even just added a completely new module where I show you producing a song from start to finish. We filmed every single piece of making it. It's literally hours of content just in that one new module. And our students have already said that is the best module we've ever made. I have a link down below for you to join. You won't regret it. Number 5, beginners don't know how to get their productions to a polished finish with a combination of editing and mixing. Pros know exactly how to make their productions get that 20%, that final 20%, that polish. They know how to do it, and they can do it easily every time. Now, before you think this is all about mixing, you need to realize that a pro's production will already sound incredible, even before mixdown, like I've already clearly demonstrated. In other words, they don't rely on mixing to save them, but they know that mixing can get that final polish to make tracks release ready. And I think way too many producers do not understand the purpose of mixing. Mixing isn't some weird magical thing, right? It's a systematic process. There are tangible things that you are going to do in a mix every single time. But the most important element of mixing is one word: focus. What is the focus of the track? And how can we accentuate that focus? Volume is really just another word for focus. If vocals are the loudest part of the track, then you're actually bringing the vocals in to focus, right? And the other things that are more quiet are gonna be brought out of focus. So when you're rolling off muddy frequencies with an EQ, what's that doing? It's adding focus to the sound and timbre of that instrument. It's all about focus. One word: focus. So when you're mixing, that should be your entire purpose, adding focus. Reverb, delay, EQ, compression, all of it is about being able to bring focus into the mix. And that means that when you're making that final 20% of decisions on a mix, it's really not so complicated because a lot of elements don't need a lot of help. I want you to look at my DAW here. This is one of my tracks that I mixed. It's called Wake Up. And you can see on here, there are a handful of different tracks that don't have any plugins or only have one or maybe 2 plugins. And these right in here, these are all vocals, okay? And the one that has the most effects on it is a vocal throw, which is like one of the very not important pieces of this thing in the grand scheme of things. Here's the vocal, okay? We have a couple buses, but look at this. As we start going around the mix, there's so many instruments without a single plugin or maybe only one plugin. Hardly anything happening. Now let's listen to it, because you would think, oh, if there's not a whole lot happening, probably doesn't sound very good. Well, let's take a listen. You tell me.
Wake
That sounds killer, right? There's not a million plugins on this thing, but so many people would think that I'm just throwing a ton of plugins at it to make it sound that way. The truth is that you don't need to do that. I did a lot of stuff right before I got to the mix, which is why it sounds the way it does. It's about what moves to make. Now, this video is obviously not a deep dive on that specific topic, but the point is true. If you just don't even know what moves to make, then how can you expect to make a great mix? It's not gonna happen by accident. Professionals know the moves that they're gonna make. They know when, they know how to make them. Amateurs, though, they tend to make moves without a real and genuine purpose, right? There's not focus. There's no intent behind the moves they make. Instead, it's kind of more like this. You ever done this? Oh, let's see if I can do this. Oh no, that didn't work. Okay, what about this? Oh no, that didn't work. Okay, what about this? Oh no, that didn't work. Oh. It never works. So everything that we talked about in this video is the entire purpose of Producer Accelerator. It's the whole reason I made it. The entire point of Producer Accelerator is to make everything that I've talked about converge in one place that it's actually structured. We cover all of this, from the basics of recording all the way to the entire course on mixing in multiple full-blown mixing sessions, so you can actually see me do this. In fact, this production here, you get to watch me build this entire track from start to finish. That's the module we're talking about. We're talking hours of mixing sessions you get. You get to see me mix this whole track. Not even to mention the private community, ability to get feedback from me and my team. As I said, we're on holiday sale, so now is the time to make a change and start 2023 the right way. I'll see you on the inside. You can join right here.